Imagine this. You've spent your whole life playing by the rules, and then you meet someone who doesn't believe the rules were ever meant for them. When someone thinks they stand above the law, reality always sends the bill. It's a weekday morning in a small New England municipal courtroom. The benches are filled with people who got up early, put on their decent clothes, and came ready to explain themselves. A retired machinist with a parking ticket, a nurse in scrubs, two grandparents holding a folder of papers. Near the back, a few faces stand out. An older man in a clean sport coat and pressed slacks, hands folded over a cane, listening carefully to every word. A woman with grocery store name tag still pinned to her sweater, citation trembling slightly in her fingers. The clerk is midway through a routine case when the side door swings open. A teenager strolls in as if he's cutting through a mall, not entering a court. Earbuds plugged in, phone in one hand, the sweet snap of chewing gum with every other step. Designer sweatshirt, spotless sneakers, expensive watch riding loose on his wrist. He doesn't hurry. He doesn't look lost. He glances around the room as if everyone else is there to watch him. Up on the bench, the judge lifts his eyes from the file. The clerk's voice trails off. One by one, conversations die. It isn't fear exactly. It's the sense that something is about to clash. The boy barely nods toward the front, more acknowledgement than respect, and drops into the defendant's chair like he's claiming a reserved seat at a game. His backpack lands with a soft thud. He flicks his thumb across the phone screen, then, finally noticing the silence, pulls one earbud out. The clerk consults her list. Case 23, State versus Lucas Carver. He lifts his chin, bored. The name hangs in the air. A few people recognize it. The older man with the cane tilts his head, watching. The judge clears his throat. Mr. Carver, on the record. You were cited for traveling 42 in a 25-mile-per-hour residential zone and for failing to comply immediately with an officer's signal to stop. On paper, it's the kind of thing courts see every day. Lucas shrugs, gum moving in his cheek. It's nothing, he says, voice carrying just enough. I figured you just pay and walk out. The words don't come with anger. They come with indifference, and that lands heavier. An older woman in the second row presses her lips together. The man in the sport coat lets out a breath through his nose. For people who've counted every dollar of a parking fine, you just pay sounds like another language. The judge's face stays neutral, but his gaze sharpens by a degree as if he's filing that sentence away. He folds his hands. Do you admit the violation, Mr. Carver? Lucas leans back, draping an arm over the chair as if posing for a photo. He chews once, twice, then answers. I don't think it really matters, he says. My dad already knows. A ripple goes through the benches, a soft, collective reaction. Not outrage exactly, recognition. They've all met that tone before, in one form or another. Lucas scans the room again, expression flat, as if everyone else is background in a scene about him. The judge doesn't raise his voice, doesn't bang a gavel. But behind his calm eyes, the calculation has changed. This isn't just about a speeding ticket anymore. It's about a boy who's never been told where the edge of the road actually is, or what happens when you finally reach it. The judge lets the last answer hang a moment, then shifts his attention. Mr. Carver, he says, tell the court a little about your household. Who's at home with you? Lucas rolls one shoulder like it's a question from a guidance counselor, not a bench. Dad owns a bunch of dealerships, he says. Car lines, service centers. Mom runs a charity thing, fundraisers, galas. They're busy. He says dealerships with faint pride. Charity thing, with the flat tone of someone reciting a brochure he didn't write. So your father sells cars, your mother manages a foundation, the judge repeats. Sounds like success by most measures. Yeah, Lucas taps his thumb against the phone on the table. They do fine. In the last row, the older woman the judge noticed earlier straightens. She has a small purse clutched in both hands, knuckles pale against the strap. After a hesitant breath, she rises. "Your Honor?" Her voice is soft, but the room is quiet enough that it carries. The judge inclines his head. "Ma'am? I'm his grandmother," she says. "Ellen Carver." She clears her throat. "I brought him today. If I hadn't showed up at his door this morning, he'd still be in bed." Lucas's jaw tightens. He stares at a point on the table. The judge gestures toward the microphone. "If you're going to speak, Mrs. Carver, let's make sure we can all hear you." She steps closer, moving carefully, one hand brushing the rail as she walks. "His grandfather passed 3 years ago," she begins. They were close. After that, everything sped up around him. His father threw himself into work, more showrooms, more sponsorships. The answer to everything was another deal. She glances at Lucas, then back at the bench. "When there was a problem at school," she continues, "it was handled with a check or a phone call. 'We'll take care of it.' That's what I kept hearing. Like my grandson was a project. Something you manage if you have enough zeros." A murmur ripples through the benches. Several heads nod without thinking. Lucas shifts in his chair, thigh bouncing under the table. At the mention of his father, the gum in his mouth goes still. "Grandma," he mutters, not into the mic. Then louder, sharp with embarrassment, "Can you not? I can handle this." He doesn't sound menacing. He sounds like someone used to shutting down conversations before they get too honest. Ellen flinches slightly at his tone, but doesn't sit right away. There's tiredness in the slope of her shoulders, and something else, stubborn hope. "I've watched him try to be loud enough to get noticed," she says quietly. "If he drives fast enough, posts the right video, maybe his father looks up from a contract. That's what I see." The judge studies the two of them, the boy, jaw set and eyes fixed anywhere but on her. The grandmother, standing small but steady in front of a room full of strangers. "This court is interested in what happened on that street," he says, voice gentler now. "But it's hard to miss that what's going on in your house is part of the story." He doesn't push Ellen to continue. He nods, a signal she can return to her seat. She does, moving a little more slowly. Around them, the older faces in the room wear familiar expressions, the look of people who have raised children, buried spouses, and know exactly how messy families can be. The judge turns back to Lucas. "All right," he says. "We've heard about the cars, the foundation, the loss in your family. Now we're going to look at what you said and did the night you were stopped, and see how much of this attitude made it onto the street." The lights in the courtroom dim a notch as the clerk cues up the footage. A soft electronic chirp, and the side screen wakes. Grainy nighttime, headlights flaring, the distant echo of traffic. "Body camera from the responding officer," the clerk announces. An engine idles loud in the microphone. The frame jolts as the officer walks into view. We see Lucas's car at the curb, taillights glowing red against a row of dark houses. Porch lights are off. It's the kind of street where children's bikes lean against fences. "Sir, engine off and hands where I can see them," the officer's voice says, steady. From the left, Lucas appears in the beam, hoodie up, shoulders squared, bravado turned up for an audience of one. "What is your problem?" his recorded voice snaps. "It's a quiet street. I wasn't hurting anybody." "You were doing 42 and a 25, the officer answers. "Step back on the sidewalk for me." The camera catches Lucas rolling his eyes, glancing past the officer as if searching for a lens. Then, the line comes, clear as day. "Back off. You don't even know who my father is." In the courtroom, no one coughs, no one shifts. The words echo off painted walls. On screen, the officer doesn't flinch. "I know exactly who your father is," he replies. "But tonight you're not his son. You're a driver I pulled over." The judge raises a hand. The clerk pauses the video. The still frame freezes Lucas mid-scowl, street lamp cutting a hard line across his face. At the defense table, the living Lucas goes a shade darker. He presses his lips together, the gum gone. One knee starts to bounce and then stops when he catches himself. The judge doesn't scold. He leans slightly forward instead, voice quieter, more pointed. "Mr. Carver," he says, "why is it so important that people know who your father is? What are you trying to buy with that question? Safety or control?" The word control lands in the silence like an object dropped in water. You can almost feel the ripple. Lucas opens his mouth, then closes it again. His throat works. For once, there's no flip answer. I just, he starts, eyes on the tabletop. If they know who he is, they don't. He trails off, unable to finish the thought in front of all these strangers. A chair scrapes softly in the back. Ellen rises again, one hand on the pew in front of her. "May I, Your Honor?" she asks. The judge nods once. She doesn't move to the microphone this time. She speaks from where she's standing, voice clear enough in the hush. "He hasn't had dinner with his father at a normal hour in, I don't know how long," she says. "There's always a launch, a meeting, a flight. Business, business, business." Her gaze flicks toward her grandson, then returns to the bench. "He thinks the only way to get noticed is to make noise," she goes on. "To go faster, be louder, do something that forces someone to look up." He's not proud of that sentence about his father. He's scared of what happens when it doesn't work. A different kind of tension fills the room now. Not anger, but recognition. People who have raised teenagers understand that particular brand of flailing. Lucas doesn't glare at her. He just looks smaller in his chair, shoulders not quite so wide. The judge slowly rises halfway from his seat, hands resting on the edge of the bench. It's a subtle shift, but everyone sees it. He's not just operating the machinery of the court anymore. He's addressing a person. "We've seen the clip," he says. "We've heard the tone. Underneath all that, I hear a young man who doesn't trust that no can come with love instead of a checkbook." He settles back down. "From here on," he adds, "we're going to deal less with your surname and more with your choices, starting with the ones that brought you to that curb." The judge studies Lucas for a long second, then asks in a tone so mild it almost slips by as small talk. "When was the last time someone looked you in the eye and said, 'No, you're wrong'?" A faint, nervous grin tugs at one corner of Lucas's mouth. "We don't really do that," he says. "In my family, if there's a problem, people work something out." "Deals," the judge says. Lucas shrugs. "You could call it that." The judge gives a short nod. "Then we'll start simple. Today, in this room, you're wrong, and we are not negotiating that." The words aren't loud, but the temperature seems to drop a degree. Whatever remained of Lucas's smirk flickers, then fades. The older folks on the benches sit a little straighter. Someone exhales through their teeth, a quiet, satisfied sound. The judge flips a page in the file. "Your grandmother mentioned a foundation. I see here that the Carver Fund made a substantial contribution to the city 2 years ago for a road safety initiative." He glances up at the screen that just showed the traffic stop. "Those cameras on residential streets," he says, "half their cost was covered by your family's donation, including the one that recorded you." Lucas blinks. "Wait, that's ours." "They were purchased with money that carries your family's name," the judge replies. "But they don't belong to you. Your grandfather signed that check so we could slow down the people who treat neighborhoods like racetracks." He lets that sink in. "You just happen to be the one racing through the frame." A low ripple moves through the gallery. A couple of people can't help a short laugh at the irony, though it isn't cruel. It's the kind that comes when the universe lines things up a little too neatly. Lucas doesn't look offended. He looks disoriented, as if someone has quietly spun the map in his hands. The judge leans forward again. "You've been talking like rules are flexible around you. Is that how you see all of them? Speed limits, tax codes, handicap spots, red lights? Just starting points?" Lucas bristles, a hint of the old edge returning. "I grew up where there's always another option," he says. "If something's in the way, you call someone. There's a guy who can fix it. That's just how it works. No, the judge says calmly. That's how dependence works. He lets the word hang there. You're not powerful, Mr. Carver. You're plugged in. Those are different things. Every option you're counting on is somebody else's phone number, mostly your father's. Take that contact list away, and what remains is your judgment, your habits, and how you treat strangers at midnight. The room falls into a deeper silence, the kind where people are careful even with their breathing. Lucas's shoulders drop a fraction. This time, when he looks down, it isn't in defiance. It's because what's being said has somewhere to land. You've spent most of your life in a game you couldn't really lose, the judge says, not unkindly. Warnings vanish, doors open, somebody smooths it over. He closes the folder with a soft thud. Now we're going to see how you play when there are no back channels. When the rules are the same ones everyone else here stands under. For a moment, the room is still. People wait for the familiar script. Big number, license points, done. The judge doesn't reach for the fine schedule. If I hit you with a heavy monetary penalty, he says, it won't change a thing. Someone in your father's office will cut a check. You'll feel inconvenienced, not responsible. By next month, this will be a story you tell at a party. He lets that picture sit there until even Lucas seems to see it. So I'm not going to punish your wallet, he continues. I'm going to involve the part of you money can't stand in for. Brows lift on the benches. Lucas shifts, uneasy in a way he hasn't been all morning. Here's the order of this court, the judge says, voice steady. 30 hours of service at the Regional Rehabilitation Center that treats people injured in traffic incidents. You will report when they say, not when it fits your social calendar. You will help staff with whatever tasks they assign, moving wheelchairs, fetching trays, folding towels. You will see what a small mistake behind the wheel looks like several months later. Lucas stares at him. You want me in a hospital? In a place where consequences live longer than your videos, the judge replies. And there's more. He consults the file only to be sure of the numbers. 10 hours speaking at local high schools under supervision of the center and the court, he continues, not as a celebrity, not as an expert. As a peer who thought speed was a game until he saw where the stretcher goes. Lucas blurts, You're asking me to stand there like some motivational speaker? The judge shakes his head. No, I'm requiring you to stand in front of kids who think like you did last month and tell them what you've seen. In plain language, no jokes if you can't carry them without lying. A few people in the gallery nod, slow and sober. For them, this isn't theory. It's grandkids and late-night phone calls they pray never come. The judge pauses, then adds something he hadn't planned to say. Years ago, he says quietly, another young man stood where you are. Same kind of story. Thought he could make it through a light. He hit a minivan instead. I saw his mother sit in that front row and ask me why no one had stopped him earlier when it was still just tickets. He looks up, eyes sharper, but not unkind. I'd rather you be angry with me now than have your grandmother sit in that seat with that question. Lucas's shoulders cave in a fraction. The fight in his face gives way to something closer to shame and, under it, fear. In addition, the judge says, you'll complete a certified driver responsibility course and write a short reflection, no more than 2 pages, on what a minor violation looks like from the standpoint of everyone else on the road. That goes in your file. Not online. He closes the folder at last. I'm not asking if you like this, he says. I'm asking if you are willing to let this be the first day you live as more than someone's last name. Lucas swallows hard. When he answers, his voice has lost its swagger. I'll do it, he says. All of it. Good, the judge replies. We'll see you back here after it's done. Bring paperwork from the center and the schools. More importantly, bring a different understanding of what a steering wheel puts in your hands. A few weeks slip by before he returns to the same courtroom. No subpoena this time, just his name on the sign-in sheet and a worn folder under his arm. When the clerk calls Lucas Carver, the The judge's brows lift slightly. "I thought our business was at the rehab center," he says. Lucas gives a small, almost awkward smile. "It was. I brought you something." He looks different in ways that have nothing to do with fabric. Plain shirt, no logo shouting across his chest, phone out of sight, shoulders less spread, more steady. The judge nods to the clerk. "Let's hear the reports first." She opens the file. "Documentation from Northside Rehabilitation," she reads. 30 hours completed. Staff note: Mr. Carver assisted with transfers, meal trays, and transport. No complaints. Asked questions about patient's injuries and stayed past his scheduled time twice. Lucas clears his throat. "There was a man my age," he says quietly. "He was hit crossing a side street. The driver said they didn't see him and were only a little over the limit. His dad told me if that car was slower, I'd be planning a fishing trip, not physical therapy." No drama in his voice, just the weight of a sentence he can't unhear. The clerk turns a page. Letters from 2 high schools. Talks completed. One counselor writes, "Several students approached afterward to say they'd reconsider their driving habits. Mr. Carver did not excuse his behavior. He described it and its potential cost." Lucas adds, "One kid came up after and said, 'I used to film the same kind of stuff. I'm deleting it.' I've never had someone change something because of what I said that didn't involve a discount code." That pulls a faint, reluctant chuckle from a few corners of the room. The judge studies him. "And you?" he asks. "Do you still believe the rules aren't meant for you?" Lucas takes a breath. "I used to think limits were walls in front of me," he says. "Now they look more like guardrails around everybody else. You don't want them? Fine. Go live in the middle of nowhere, but not on a street with front yards and bus stops." He hesitates, then goes on. "I talked to my grandfather, told him I don't want my whole life to be his business card. I said I'd start working part-time at the lot, not as the owner's kid, just doing actual jobs." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Finally, you're not afraid to be just yourself." The judge leans back, fingertips pressed together. "In this room," he says, "I hear a certain sentence more often than I'd like. Do you know who I am?" People throw it around like a shield. His gaze settles on Lucas, but his words are meant for everyone present, and for whoever will hear this story later. "The question that matters isn't who you are by name or family," he continues. "It's who you'll be after you walk out of these doors and nobody's watching but the person in your mirror." He signs the final note in the file, then closes it for good. Lucas doesn't pump a fist or grin. He simply nods to the bench, then turns toward the exit. At the aisle, he steps aside and holds the door for an older man with a cane, a woman with a grocery badge, a stranger digging for a parking stub. They don't know his last name. They don't need to. For the first time in a long while, he leaves a room not as someone untouchable, but as what the law had been trying to see all along. One more citizen, learning at last how much his choices weigh on everyone else's day.